Hi homies, Manny here from the School of Homeopathy. Hope you're doing good. Eugenie asked me if we had anything we could share with you guys, and so I've supplied a recording for you to enjoy, some teaching from the School of Homeopathy, a gift from us to you. If you're ever interested in studying homeopathy, check out our website. We have courses for beginners, for those that want to become a practitioner, or for homeopaths that would like some continuing professional development or postgraduate training. So yeah, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. But for now, enjoy this teaching and get inspired. Thanks so much. Bye now.
Hello, people. Thanks for coming and joining us. I hope you can all see me, and I hope you can all see a picture of a little girl and a lady sitting looking at the beach. And if you can, then we're in the right place. Now, why I wanted to do a session on radioactives is because I think at the moment the world is in a radioactive time. Sholton and others, I think, have brought up the idea that human society, and maybe even Gaia herself, goes through phases which equate maybe with different miasms. Cave to Computer is a book that looks at things like that, or different groups of remedies. And if there was a pervading energy on Earth at the moment, I can think of nothing that would fit it better other than the radioactive energy. It'll be interesting to, if you want to type some things with your ideas about why that might be and what's going on, we could have a look at those. But there's a few phrases and words that have come into our language since the Manhattan Project in '45, when we first exploded an atomic bomb, and we gradually came to understand the power of these radioactives. And one of them is meltdown. When everything is getting too much, control is being lost, it's getting too hot, it's getting too dangerous, and everything collapses and melts down. And you could look at the reactor of Fukushima gradually sinking into the earth. It's in meltdown. There's not a lot we can do about it. And there's a lot of things on earth which are in meltdown. Another one is chain reaction. Chain reaction is when one thing starts, it sets off another thing, that sets off another thing, and it becomes unstoppable. And another one is critical mass. Now, critical mass in radioactive terms is when there's enough radioactive material there where it can actually, if you like to put it simply, heat itself up. And as it begins to warm up and as it begins to explode, it produces more and more energy. And once you get to a certain point, there's no turning back. And if we have a look at our world at the moment, there's all sorts of things which are at the critical mass point, and potentially heading towards a meltdown. These would include, as I'm sure you will maybe typing away yourselves, things like human population. How many more people can we actually fit onto this finite planet? Oil running out. If oil runs out, 80% of us are going to die. And this concept of peak oil has been around for a while. We do keep discovering more and more oil, but without it, we don't get any food, and that's going to be that. And maybe most importantly and hardest to deal with is climate change, whereby we've affected the whole Earth and we're actually warming it up and altering the very ecosystem we need to survive. This is one of the features of people who require the radioactive remedies. And that's the fact that they have a vision or a view of the entire world. If we were to look at the periodic table, which I'll just pull one up for you, I'm sure you're all very familiar with this. And the radioactives are the ones at the very bottom, beginning with TH, they're in yellow, beginning with thorium. Now, as you descend the periodic table, starting off with hydrogen and helium, that's really just the womb. Lithium and beryllium is the womb or the small family. Natrium, ure, and silica, phosphorus is the friends, the village. You get the town with iron and calcium, cuprum. The city, argentum, palladium. The country, the king of the country, gold. The tyrant of the country, mercury. And then we get down to the seventh row. And the seventh row is the entire world. And things which affect the entire world have a radioactive energy. And of course, it was with the discovery of the nuclear bomb, whereby the first time humans actually had the ability to maybe not destroy all of Gaia, but to destroy a lot of it, and certainly to destroy themselves in a global way. And therefore, people requiring these remedies will often think globally. And you'll see that coming out in some of the cases. What other things might be reaching meltdown? Well, the collapse of the financial institutions we had a while back was recovered, but that's one area that could go. So the Earth is in a it's on a precipice at the moment. And we either have to use the amazing abilities that we have to save the world, or we're going to destroy the world. And that is one of the quandaries in the radioactive patient. Do I use the great power I feel within me and attempt to use it for good? Or do I take the risk of unleashing a tsunami, a tornado, a comet crashing into the Earth by letting these powers out? So what sort of words are our radioactive patients going to use? I'm just going to show you a little video here. I don't know what are the words that come up to you while you watch this? Because the words that you think of as you watch this will be many of the words which our radioactive patients will use in their consults. And so obvious ones are mushroom, power, power beyond our wildest dreams, fire, burning, destruction, majestic, explosion, extinction, the end of all things, the destruction of society, the ultimate foolishness, endless, forever. Ancient, the half-life of some of these things which we're using is about 70 million years. That's when Tyrannosaurus Rex walked the earth. This is long-term damage which is unstoppable. The theme of ancientness will often come up in our consults, and ideas about primitive man, Neanderthals, because not only do these things survive a vast amount of time, but also the effect they have goes through generation after generation after generation. There's still people in Nagasaki and Hiroshima who are suffering from the effect of those bombs dropped nearly 80 years ago. And it alters the very DNA. So other words they might use are mutation, contamination, black, soot, nuclear winter, and also words like infiltrate, hidden, insidious. Because if we think of the things that have the global power, who are they? Who is the boss of Monsanto? Who runs Google? Okay, we know who Trump is. We know who May is. We know who the kings are. We know who the presidents are. But who are the people who actually are now completely running our world, where our row 6 kings are dancing attendance on them? We don't know who they are. We know who some of them are. Bill Gates, we know his name. One thing is that these organizations which act globally do not have to be organizations for destruction and damage. Anyone with a global sense could be radioactive. So whoever set up Greenpeace would also be a radioactive energy. So what exactly is radioactivity? What's happening? The radioactivity we're talking about in homeopathy is primarily fission, coming from down the bottom of the periodic table, row 7. And this is what happens in fission. Just have a little look. So there's uranium, the heaviest naturally occurring substance on Earth. And it releases a neutron from the nucleus. That hits another uranium atom, which implodes, explodes, and it forms 2 totally new substances. So the uranium identity has disappeared, and 2 or more new identities have happened. And therefore, this is a major theme as well, where my identity has been shattered. It has disappeared. I am now someone else. There is the themes of breaking glass. There's a sheet of glass that is shattered and it takes new shapes and new shards that comes up repeatedly in these cases. So a complete loss of identity. Another thing you're going to see, because of the sheer weight of these, is if you have a look, uranium is 240 times as heavy as hydrogen. And therefore, these cases have a weight to them. They have a heaviness. They are what I call bad shit cases. If you've got a lot of heavy, bad stuff going down, particularly from an early age, you're looking for a heavy, bad news remedy. And these are as heavy as it gets. Therefore, there's going to be words like crushing, I can't stand the weight, buried under a mountain of rock. And you're also going to have images which are global and of huge power. And therefore, frequently coming up in these cases are images of tidal waves, of tsunamis, of earthquakes, of volcanoes. Because these are the things which have such immense power. They have a global effect. And therefore, that is the area where our radioactive patient sits. So what I'd like to do now is just show you the first radioactive case that I had, who was a young lad. He came to me because he had a bone cyst. Now here again, these things are heavily, heavily syphilitic with a strong leprous feel often, and therefore the affinity of the radioactives is the bone, the eyes, and of course, particularly your genetic material, the DNA, because these are the things that cause mutation and change. So let's have a little look at case number one. This lad was sitting in my surgery and he had two books. He's 10 years old. One was, What is Infinity? And the other was, How to Find Zero. That's not normal in a 10-year-old. Okay, immediately I knew something was going on here, which was not natrium, was not sulfur. And I asked him the question, what's your favorite animal, son? And he said, the 9-banded armadillo. I said, why? And he said, it's the earliest form of proto-mammal. Okay. It is a social thing. I got dumped. The last 4 people I tried to go out with won't go out with me. It is puzzling. It haunts me. No one knows me perfectly well. I can't express myself. I can be mysterious and different. I keep my feelings to myself. I don't know myself well. Things about me surprise me. I am being boastful recently to be stronger, because being modest is weak. I try to give myself a strong image, but people don't understand me. It is like trying to tell someone who is deaf and your voice is weak. That's a pretty interesting first sentence from a 10-year-old, isn't it? I am limited. It angers me. I feel I am throwing bricks because I'm so frustrated. It is like being trapped in a pool of jelly. It is hard to see through. I'm enclosed. The tube is bendable. It can be stretched, but can't be broken. They can't see you because of the jelly. I'm inside the tube and cannot break out. And now he spontaneously says, I get these feelings about politics. Okay, so he's what Janet would say, he's in the zone here, and he's jumped to a totally different subject. But the subject he's jumped to is politics, and he's talking about now globally. You have one person who is decisive. Governments always disagree, but just one person makes their views known. That is dictatorship, which is horrifying. Tell me about the jelly. Not knowing yourself. Inside the jelly, there is a split personality. The glass is shattering. One says do this, one says do that. One person thinks be naughty, screaming, be bad, and the other side cries no. It's like two people talking, an angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. And this was the first point in this consult, which was maybe 12 years ago, when I had the tiniest clue what I might do. But obviously, he wasn't an anacardium case. I'm desperate to get out. I'm screaming and fighting. I cannot convey my message, which is myself. It is despair because you can't get out. I've always had that. I've always felt I couldn't convey myself. In that space, I imagine I have special powers when I can express what I want. Normal life is tedious. I want to break out. I want to come up with a great theory, and I have the imagination, but not the maths. This is a thing that's also shared with the lanthanides, where the radioactives and the lanthanides want to leave a legacy. They want to do something that's going to change all of society, to change the world, because that's how big their vision is. I want to be more than ordinary, so I am never forgotten in history. I used to imagine myself as having the ability to fly, or I could just wave my hand and things would appear. Powerful, immense power. A flaming figure, not burning, but made from fire. He can do anything, like a god. This theme of like a god is something that is brought out by Jan Scholten. His words for row 7 include the magician and the magus, because it's at row 7 where the magic begins. It's where quantum physics begins. It's when impossible things that are beyond human imagination start. And if you're entering the world of the magician and the supernatural. It is so old, and the time it existed in has passed like the dinosaurs. So they're making a reference to dinosaurs. He has an evil mocking face. He has an upper body, but the legs melt away. You can be cruel or kind. Occasionally I'd be this figure and try to make a difference, to be an expert, have huge knowledge. Huge is a word that's used a lot. I dream of a flaming figure often. The dreams are abnormal, abstract, and bizarre. The flaming figure represents all the active universe, all the different sorts of energy, electricity, movement. There is a theme of time. Time creatures in the form of water droplets move through the water channels. They are killed by the energy. The creature in the energy knocks time, parallel time, in between fire. It is like hell with a flaming monster. Now, hell, of course, used to be known as the underworld, and there lived Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, known as Pluto by the Romans, plutonium. And so the theme of the underworld and hell is there. But the flaming creature wants to do good. It is the face of the universe, and it keeps things stable. The remedy I gave him was Rad Brom. And Jonathan Shaw summed up the main feeling of Rad Brom. I cannot imagine a state of being that would be more unbearable and horrifying than to be deprived of the ability as a living and pain-filled soul to express oneself. And you might remember at the beginning, that's what he talked about. He said nobody could understand him. He couldn't connect to anybody. And he said the feeling in Rad Brom was similar to Munch's painting The Scream. Check everything's going all right with this, because I can't hear or see you guys. Great, all looks fine. I saw him again 3 years later, and his arm improved. He was able to play rugby, etc., etc. Now he's got a different problem. It's an emotional problem. He hasn't managed to prepare for his oral exam, and it's not even his main exam, it's his mock. What is this like for you to not be ready for your exam? Terrified, faint, can't eat, everything is, I've pushed myself too much. I'm so het up. I said, tell me about, it is an accelerated feeling. It is how I always feel, panicky, shaking, so het up, a fear of failure. My head is beating. I feel faint. It is like a mad terror. It is like being chased. It is horror. I am in a mad fury, a passion, wandering, storming, raging at myself. It is a terror of failure. So you see, loads of us have got problems. We're worried about passing an exam. But if you are radioactive, then your terror, your fear, the whole state of this is a much bigger, more powerful state. My thinking stops. I must pass. I rage at myself for not being able to do it. It is disturbing. It suddenly comes upon me like you've walked around the corner and then complete shock. There is a dead body, like a corpse. Afterwards, it's like a weight is lifted and I can smile and party and run. I said, tell me about the weight. It is like a massive cloud weighing and pushing. I am working like a maniac trying to animate myself, but there is a dread of what might come. I sweat, I'm cold, awful dread. It comes to confidence I have none beforehand. My joy of learning is smothered, crushed by the weight of work. And you can imagine it's actually the weight of the nucleus in these things. There's so many protons and so many neutrons there that they actually are collapsing into themselves. I'm so extremely fascinated by maths. Failure is the ultimate, the bottom. I hate losing and coming second. I want to try harder. A voice in my head says, don't fail. Is this the point I may slip? I'd be so upset if I couldn't go to Cambridge. Needless to say, this guy made it to Cambridge, having got A's in absolutely everything, being a grade 8 violinist, a top cross-country runner, a grade 8 singer. He went on to one of the, before Cambridge, one of the top schools in the country where he was head boy, and he passed with a first. That's the sort of destiny that these radioactives can have. What would it be like if you didn't go to Cambridge? The end, hopeless, black. My career is ruined. I could never achieve what I wanted. It would be the ultimate blow. Tell me more. I would be rejected and everything would hate me. My main aim would be gone. I would have lost direction. I would be lost like a map, lost and left floating on the sea with no direction. This is interesting. I would think at least half of my cases talk about the ocean and the feeling of a vast ocean and being lost on it. I have such anger at myself. It would be the same if I didn't get all A-star results. I would be weak, tearful, no point to life, horrific, the ultimate nightmare. Such a great impact, it would be hell. Tell me about the impact. Every part of the world, all the world, radioactive, would be affected. The landscape would be scarred and blemished. It is like a crack in the sheet of glass, which is my life. Tell me about the landscape. It would be black, dark, no hope, no lights, dust. People would have no work and production would be at a standstill. Cities would be ruined and deserted. Everyone is dying of disease that rots away at everything. Nuclear bombs are going off everywhere and the radioactive effects causing mutations just getting worse. I mentioned earlier about the fact that nobody knows the name of who runs Google, Monsanto, Shell Oil, all these global organizations that run us, okay? Because they're hidden. As radioactivity itself is hidden, the most lethal part of this is in fact not the explosion, despite its appallingness. It's the fact that for years and years afterwards, it can creep in, hidden, insidiously, and still kill you. I don't know whether any of you saw that cartoon made by the guy who did the snowman. I've forgotten what it's called. But there's an elderly couple who get caught in a nuclear attack and they're boiling their water, thinking that's going to stop any problems from drinking it. Of course, the water is completely full of radioactivity and they can't see it. My body wouldn't bother, my brain would give up, my heart rate would drop, I'd be brooding, grimy, grotty. I wouldn't care about my parents, I would grow my hair long, say what's the point, and wear dark clothes. And then suddenly, now he's doing his mocks. He's just a 15-year-old child again. Okay, and he's going to maybe be a bit gothy, which for him would be an appalling thing to do. And you realize this is still just a child, but his mind is in this radioactive world. I would be trapped and I would stay in my room and I'd be lazy. And then he says some of the major radioactive words: degeneration, collapse, and disintegration. And the other word he didn't use is annihilation. They are strong suggesters, those words, that if somebody's talking about their life in terms of disintegration or annihilation, that's radioactive. However, what happens if you pass? Everyone's okay. Then he will be a renowned scientist, recognized by his work in humanity. So he's got a legacy. He will invent something for humanity. I did it. A new theory, something worthwhile, a new form of energy, a new form of power that could power the world. I know I won't be Einstein. I won't come up with the unified field theory. I have met more intelligent people than me, which was nice. I wasn't jealous because they were too strange. I can explain things in layman's terms to others. I can communicate flexibly. You'll be okay to be the right-hand man of a genius. However, I must be in the top 100, that's in the world, in that place above the boundary. Sometimes I feel isolated on the social stage because no one understands me. I want a soulmate who won't judge. And I gave him uranium nitricum. And I had the privilege of working with this guy, and I still do. Now he's in his late 20s now, I think. All the way through, and he taught me such a lot about radioactives and other things as well. He was a complete genius, and he told me the experience of when an idea occurs to him. He said, it's like I'm in a black lake of oil and I'm quiet. It's like I'm meditating. And then suddenly something's happening deep in the oil, and then this big bubble forms in the oil, and I've got no idea what it is. And then it bursts, and then my idea is there. It was great. I was very lucky to be able to have the opportunity to work with him. So other things about radioactives. One thing is that I think the inherent energy of humankind is radioactive, and has been ever since we had our cognitive revolution 50,000 years ago, or at some point we became radioactive. And this point we're in now, when the whole Earth seems to be a point of meltdown after the Manhattan Project, where we first exploded a nuclear bomb, this has been our destiny since we were primitive man. And the reason I think this is because some of the dreams and themes that came up in Jeremy Schiller's proving of plutonium nitricum. Because if we look at the ancient, our most ancient myths from 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, when no one had any idea what radioactive activity was, or periodic tables were, or anything like that. The Greeks, we went down to the underworld. Known as Hades. And that's where Pluto lived, that's where Hades lived, that's where you went when you died. And when you were down there, you came across a river, and a man would take you across the river Styx. He was called Chiron. And when you got to the other side, you would meet the hideous Cerberus, three-headed dog, in the fire of hell. And of course, the Christians had the dream of the fallen angel. They had the dream of Satan rebelling against God. If we just have a little look. These are the dreams of plutonium nitricum. Dreams of dogs with multiple heads. Dreams of a fallen angel. Dreams of a river in the underworld. Dreams of the underworld. Dreams of an enormous penis, which Satan, of course, was associated with. Dreams of boats. Dreams of death and the afterlife. Danger of drowning. Dreams of giants. Of course, at the very beginning, when Gaia mated with Uranus, their first children were the Titans, which included the giants. Half people, half animals. Dreams about rebelling against Christianity and dreams of ancient Rome. And so within the proving of plutonium net, within the energy, the essence of plutonium net lies the ancient myths of mankind. And the thing which has altered mankind more than anything else is also highly radioactive. And that is wheat. And if we have a look at the proving of wheat, in fact, we'll just have a very quick look now. It seems to have two parts of it. Joy in nature, raw meat, killing animals, meadows, mountains, having children, beautiful landscapes, beautiful things, naked people, exalted loves, forest, caress, loving nature, loving music. This is the Garden of Eden. For me, this is the hunter-gatherers in the here, in the now, moving through Gaia, undamaged, free. And then some genius did maybe the worst thing that ever happened to human beings, which was realize that you could use this grass and plant it and stop moving and stay in one place and get vastly more food per acre and have loads more children. And it was that moment when agriculture was discovered that the population started increasing and that human beings had enough food whereby they didn't all have to hunt, they didn't all have to eat. So you had the stonemasons, you had the musicians suddenly appearing, you had the soldiers, you had the prison guards, you had the torturers, you had the scientists, you had the dreamers. We had diversification. And if it hadn't been for wheat, there'd be no Taj Mahal. And if it hadn't been for wheat, there'd be no atomic bomb. So it too has a huge polarity. And what we're looking at here is one side of wheat, Garden of Eden. These are also rubrics. Dead bodies coming to life, malicious and injuring. And then this amazing rubric here, dreams, the explosion of atomic bombs. There's only 4 remedies in that rubric. One is wheat, one is plutonium nit, one is ozone, and the other one is lac humanum. Delusion I will come to one. Dreams of cancer, and then this, dreams of a comet hurtling towards Earth. In other words, Armageddon. There's 2 remedies in that. The other one that has that is Rad Brom. Suicidal from despair, rejected, forsaken, beloved not by his parents, quarreling, estranged from the family, dominated, scorned, suppressed anger, violent. But let's get to the nub. Dreams of your children being murdered. I think that's about maybe the worst symptom I know in the materia medica. And ailments from the death of your loved ones of a child. And that's wheat. And wheat and rice, which has a similar energy. I was delighted to find out. Jeremy proved some wild rice. That's the energy of what's enabled us to do everything that we've done. So, let's have another look at the case. Maybe we should just say something actually about radiation. There's 3 sorts of radiation. The first sort is known as alpha radiation. And what actually alpha radiation is, well, there's Hades, by the way, or Pluto if you want to be Roman. Here we have our radioactives right down the bottom here. The first form of radiation is alpha radiation. And this is when a substance collapses, becomes a new substance, and releases a helium nucleus, vastly accelerated. That's a sort of radiation that we had in polonium, which was the first, or one of the first Russians who were killed over here. He was given polonium to eat. Very, very nasty radiation, but it only penetrates for a short distance, which is why you'd have to eat it for it to kill you. All right? But it's like from the very bottom of row 7, the breakdown products produce helium. So again, we have this cycle where it's going back to the beginning. The second sort of radiation is called beta radiation. That is an accelerated electron, more penetrating, more dangerous. And the most dangerous is gamma radiation, which is a really, it's like an X-ray, but with extra power. And that will penetrate through a meter of concrete. This is what the Joshis said about radioactives. They desire to do something new, huge, and constructive for society. They are full of optimism and enthusiasm, and they want to achieve fame, name, and recognition. This is completely, I've had this repeatedly in my cases. They are able to do difficult tasks with ease and with great efficiency, and they have an intense desire to achieve great heights. We know row 6, the gold series, has power and responsibility and weight. Get onto row 7 and you have huge weight, unimaginable power, and crushing responsibility. They needed this to express a power more gigantic than anything that man has ever known or controlled. This is the power of pure energy that surges in our radioactive remedies. It is beyond our control and nothing can conquer or destroy it. There are two sides to this energy. It can create, produce, cause growth, development, and yet it can also destroy and break us and our entire civilization. And the conflict of the actinides starts at actinium, but if you like, all of row 7, is do I live following my intuition? And intuition is a big word with these. Like the guy with his bursting oil, they can access places other people can't. They're magic, clairvoyant. Do they follow their intuition, believe in their innate power, and be true to themselves and take the consequences of this power, or do they not? I will try to show you if I can. There's another lady who's done a lot of work with these. Her name is Margaret Pluvier. Here we go. And whether she'd see it like this, but in a way I see this as being the positive side of the radioactives. And these are words I hear often from radioactive patients. Altruism, communication, listening, wisdom, self-reflection, perception, transparency, overview. Interesting. I presume Buddha must have been a radioactive, because those are his words, and his experience has been global and incredibly long-lasting. Compassion, trust, universal truths, old age and grandparents. This is Margaret Pluvier. It is well worth looking at her work. She wrote an essay about how the radioactive energy can enter into a young child when it's not seen, when it's not recognized, when it's not loved. And then at that time, an old soul enters. When you hear people saying it's an old soul, then also think radioactive. Other main themes we get: vampire bats, which is interesting. Half animal, half human. Mutated animals. I hope you can find no messages. I just had a little message saying my internet became unstable, but I hope that you are seeing me fine. I'd like to show you a second case. Now we've looked at these, you'll see how all the way through here, it's clearly radioactive. This is a man with the worst hay fever I've ever seen, and also severe psychological problems at this time. This must be 8 years ago. It took me 7, 8, 9, I can't remember, prescriptions before I finally got the right one, which helped him enormously. But let's just look at the radioactive themes here, which I missed for 3 years. Terrible nightmares, fear. He used to surround his bed with knives because he was so frightened. He actually would do that. Stammer, asthma, put in a steam cot, totally enclosed, terrified. When they took him out of this in the hospital, he'd hurl his toys at the nurses and screaming. His parents could hear him in the street. He was put on antipsychotics at such a young age. And it was all looking pretty terrible for him. And then he was 12. He had a dream of a magnificent long-haired Indian warrior on a horse. So this is like a primitive man image. Because of this dream that he'd had, he was inspired to start long-distance running. He did it for a year, and he finished up after a year being the 3rd best in his whole state, which is a remarkable achievement. Transformed, etc., etc. All great. Then when he was 28, the nightmares returned for him. Overwhelmed by psychic forces, there was a bat flying around in his room. There actually was a bat flying around in his room. He came from another country where bats were commoner. He was overwhelmed. He attended a workshop. He'd previously had images of Indian villages, and in the workshop, excuse the language in this one, he went fucking nuts. The organizer of the workshop had to jump on him, but he said it was like a veil rent open and he saw the carnage. His Indian village was attacked, old men, women, and children brutally slaughtered and hacked to pieces. He was a warrior and wasn't there to defend his tribe and had extreme shame. So, terrible thing has happened. 31 years old, he did another workshop and was overcome with terrible grief and shame, and he had a vision of an Indian man and lady giving him an eagle. He was forgiven, and the eagle runs very free in him, he says. And he was given a lot of birds of prey, which partially helped with his asthma by other homeopaths. This is it. First thing he says, problems are hitting me like big sets of waves. That's a classic radioactive thing. Dad's death was the biggest wave. I'm fucked emotionally. I wasn't prepared for Dad's death. It's interesting, plutonium nitricum has more rubrics to do with the father than any other remedy. I'm alone and empty like an animal that has lost its pack and just left to wander, torn up with responsibility for my family. I'm so fucking angry. I'm ripped apart like my guts are ripped out. I don't care. Fuck you. Bring it on. Let's fight. A blind rage. You think you're tough. Let's see how tough you are. It is like Braveheart wielding an axe, chopped to pieces and finally collapsing. It feels Neanderthal, radioactive. I want to kill and hurt. It is like the suffering of war. I will do anything to protect my family, row 2, my community, row 4, row 5, and my country, row 6. I'm fighting against the odds. I am the last man standing. And then he comes out with a lot of animal language, licking his wounds, ripped, big wounds. He wants to go to Nepal with the creatures and the people, freedom, beautiful nature. Beautiful nature, by the way, is a major theme of the radioactives. They absolutely love nature and wild places. They are animal in that way. He wants to hang out with Tibetans, mountain people, primitive people, spiritual people, wild and beautiful, connected to nature. He has images of cats after an awful fight, raw fear, his pack is gone. I am a warrior, I embraced my father, I loved it. He needs to triumph, manly embrace, victory, making love by the fire, dong, 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 dong. Dreams, 2 recurring dreams. I'm in the ocean and huge waves are coming. Okay, 2 classic radioactives. And the other dream, he battles with psychic forces. Classic magic magus radioactive. I didn't know. He's being taken over. The force is unseen. There's a desperate battle for my soul. It has taken me over. It comes through my body. It feels heavy. He is losing to this force, but then he triumphs because he calls upon the spirit of a bird of prey and he drives the talons into the bastard. Okay, so he uses magic. However, I gave him like lube. Chest is really bad. Racked with shame. Terrible, terrible. The space in his chest is getting smaller and smaller. Something more powerful than me, animal, but also power, dying, hard, grief. He wants to be free. He is locked up in his mammoth effort to get the breath in. So mammoth. And then he gives up and he's free and his grandparents are there and he is flying. Virtually all the radioactives fly too, because when they fission together, they release the radiation, which is like a phoenix flying out from the fire, going right across the universe. Am I a bird or a man? In the space, there's slow fiddle music, melancholy, and he goes between worlds. Magic. The massacre / horror, shame, utter isolation. He's standing up in my consulting room shouting, "Great spirits, how could you do this?" And he's seeing bats. He's dreaming of bats. The movement is fast. He was a runner. When I run through the woods quickly, fast, dodging, silent, like a bat, he was running through the woods. I gave him vampire bat. Took me a while to get. Thank you, Lee from Freeman's. Helped a bit, but then fucked up. Vampire bat. He then has dreams of bats, delusions of bats coming in. The energy in the room increases. He feels the force going through him. And then he has a dream. He looked out of the window and there were dinosaurs grazing near the house. He felt really heavy. I felt I was melting down. Okay, he's really trying to make me understand this, what he needs. My life is breaking down and I can't stop. Absolute failure. Fucked up my responsibilities, my duties, suicidal. He could walk into a desert and everyone would shun him. This leprous feel is really strong in a lot of these. My life is disintegrating. Dinosaurs are decay, radioactive decay. Ancestors, primitive beings. This is the most radioactive thing you can imagine your whole life. I gave him plutonium nit. Quite good. Boom, boom. He wants to be a nomad. But his chest is still being crushed. He's like a caged animal, trussed up in ropes, straitjacket, mad, writhing against the chains. Plutonium nit hadn't worked. What am I going to do? I gave him a U4, which is a feeling of being wrapped up tightly and being crushed and squeezed. I gave him the tubercular one, ACAL it's called, did nothing. Except for he had this dream. He went down a spiral staircase, interesting with the affinity to DNA here. And there was a banquet laid out for me. The king and the queen had done it. So in other words, row 6, the king, row 5, the queen, had made him a banquet. It was very gracious. I was the only guest and it was like a gift from God, row 7. When I'm on my own in the wilderness, I feel a primitive power. I let out a primal scream in war. There is a recurrent theme in my dreams where I'm taken over by a force, row 7, which is too powerful, row 7. It takes different forms, row 7. There is something on my back holding me back. I must kill it like ramming it into a spike. Sometimes a witch, row 7, other things too, casts a heavy, down the bottom of the periodic table, spell, and I need to fight the spell. I would surround myself with knives as a child. I yearned for my father's love and affection, but he was cruel. I surround myself. If I could sort this out, I would be a king because I have a huge sense of purpose and I want to bring together nature and my work. I want recognition and to leave something behind me and to leave behind this sense of failure. So again, we have this thing about leaving a legacy. I gave him the lanthanide samarium, which is from the same column as plutonium, column 8 in the periodic table. Carb. Nah, nowhere near it. After the last consultation, I was a terrified wild creature. I have to drag this out. We have carried this thing through generation after generation, just the same as the effects of the radioactivity go through generation after generation. It runs through the men. Addiction, violence, madness, cruelty. Binge drinking, a runaway train on speed, crashing cars, drinking, cocaine, father, binge drinking, wild madness, a cousin shot himself, another is insane. You see, so this is bad shit stuff. Bad shit stuff needs a bad shit remedy. It is battling inside me, I want to throw it up. But there's also great courage and adventure. When he was 12 years old, my granddad went north for the gold rush. Like how many 12-year-olds do that? I have a wildness in my head, speed, alcohol, rage, aggression. I surround myself with knives. Anyone who knows their lanthanides really well will know what remedy surrounds itself with knives. Jan Scholten actually said that. What a genius. The remedy is dysprosium. It's a lanthanide. I didn't give this guy a lanthanide. I need to throw up the shame, gagging, get the black bile out. Death is everywhere, radioactive. Destruction, Gollum in the marshes. Gollum, Lord of the Rings, fantasy, epic. The madness of killing. My dad said, I'll fucking kill you. I need to give birth to something horrible and squirming. These past life visions, grandfather and grandmother came, the fire is lit, the madness of slaughter, slashing, severed heads. I'm carrying this thing, it is a burden. Christ, obviously radioactive, with the cross. Every generation is battle with this, what we do. We have to be healed. I have to be really strong because I see destruction all around, horror, loathe myself, disgusting shit, failure, outsider, a leopard. I had a dream where I had to kill a leopard. I looked into its eyes and I thanked it before I killed it. This is like a loathing, writhing, black, grimacing, snarling, pursuing, immense power. I'm still not with it at all. I gave the leprous cactus Cereus serpentinus, which has got a very powerful radioactive side to it, by the way. Black dragons flying, all sorts of stuff. He has a dream of a vampire sucking the blood out of his head, walking in Cornwall. He is taken over by an ancient energy, ancient and so powerful in the cliffs, where ancient father is in the cliffs. Those granite cliffs are masculine, they overtake me. He perches on top of them. What am I going to do? I thought the pterodactyl is ancient, it's a dinosaur, it's a stone. Couldn't get it as a remedy, I gave him Archaeopteryx. Things seemed to be good until I bought a knife. I wanted to go do some bushcraft, and I was plunged into a world of madness. This is the end, by the way. It was the knife. I used to surround myself with them as a child. I'm being overpowered, and I need to call on eagle magic to give me strength to overcome in the battle. I need to remember my power. I've made such terrible mistakes, bubbling up inside. All life, radioactive, all life is at stake, and I scream with rage and grief. What is happening to the planet, to the wild animals? How can we stop the extinction? Will there be anything left to show the kids? It is a madness. We've crossed the line. There's nothing left to lose. We must take up arms. It is like Avatar. He went to see the film Avatar twice in 2 days. Avatar, for those of you who don't know, is about the taking over of a whole planet and the destruction of natural beauty. I will die beside the wild animals. Let them come. Gather up all you love. There's nothing else to do. I must do this or there'll be nothing left. It will just be barren, futile, and fucking nothing. Radioactive. I see a planet with no life, which is like the slaughter of the tribe. No tribe, alone. All that you knew that was life is gone. It just leaves the lone warrior. All that is human is destroyed. I could just smash my arm, fuck you, crazy shit, and walk into a hail of bullets. That is what you do as a man. There is nowhere to go. You give up or you do it to protect what you love. And finally, after 3 years and 10 consults, I got it. He obviously needs a radioactive. That's been really clear for a long time. But he doesn't need plutonium, that is column 8. He needs the radioactive from column 12. Column 12 is where Mercury is. Column 12 is the most desperate fight of all. Column 12 is Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Assad, whereby there's no point in surrendering. There's no Geneva Convention for you here. So you just have to fight like crazy, 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 because if you lose, you're dead. You get hung and spat at if you're Hussein. You get buggered and shot and thrown into a cesspit if you're Gaddafi. This is the energy of column 12. And so I gave him Californium nitricum. I gave him the nitricum because of this feeling of being bound that he had, bound up in chains. And that's the theme of Californium nitricum. Of all nitricums, beg your pardon. And one of the most beautiful things in my practice then happened, which happens occasionally after 3 years and 10 remedies. No hay fever for the first time ever, and haven't needed to use my inhaler once. I've been psychologically transformed. I did have a dream. I was released out into space. It was beautiful. That is where we are from. This is our origins. Often radioactives will talk about space. This is who I am. This is a real breakthrough. There's always been this force greater than me, and I've done everything I can to battle it. After the remedy, I got ready to fight, but I just let go, which was hard because the speed was so intense. And I was catapulted through the Earth's atmosphere, clinging on, and I reached space, and I was released. The force had gone. It was heavy. It came through my body. It was malevolent and wants my soul. I had to fight for possession of my soul. it has gone. And as you can read, he did fabulously well. That wasn't the end of his story. And you might come across his story elsewhere, because I can't remember, a year after or something, hay fever much better. He developed a problem with pain in his testicles and that area. Went to the docs, had this, that, blah, 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 bomb. Came to me, repeated the Californium, did nothing, blah, blah, blah. I looked through the case again. In fact, the prescription I gave him was the first time I used the remedy testosterone, which worked really, really, really well. And that is pretty interesting when we think of remedies which may have a radioactive energy to them that aren't minerals from row 7. And they will include possibly the sarcodes, progesterone, testosterone, Sirius serpentinus. And of course, we've got Diospirus caquicreveld, which was the tree that was underneath the bomb dropped on Nagasaki. And that is a fascinating remedy, and I will use that when my case seems to be obviously plant and yet also obviously radioactive. And that's got all of these themes, plus it's got a little bit more. Maybe it's got the theme of having gone through the most appalling circumstances and then surviving, which the tree by a miracle did, and is living on now. So we could look at other cases, but the themes there are, I hope you will find really, really clear. I hope you can hear all of that okay. I hope you can appreciate the potential importance of these remedies at this time, because I do see that our society and our Gaia getting into this state at the moment. And is there anything else I particularly want to tell you? Anything apocalyptic, earth exploding, world exploding, despair for the world, tidal waves. Interesting one case. Asylum seekers are coming from all quarters. So thinking about the world, they're coming from the world, and they are approaching us like a tidal wave. Okay, I think we'll stop then. I'll have a look at your comments, which I can do when I stop sharing the screen. Thanks for coming. Hope that was helpful. And have a good day. Okay, I had a question. What were the remedies I used? The first case was radbrom, followed by uranium nitricum. And the column 12 radioactive is californium. There are two, what we call isotopes of californium, two different sorts. It depends on how many neutrons they have in the nucleus. And the lighter one is you can use for column 12. The heavier isotope of californium, Margaret Pluvier says you could use as column 13. We don't have any remedies beyond column 13, not ones which we can get in a normal way homeopathically. And the Nagasaki tree was Diospirus caquicreveld. There is a Diospirus caqui, which I think I'm not totally sure, is ebony, but the creveled one is the one that actually, the one tree, the world tree that survives the blast. If anybody's got any questions, you can actually ask me a question now if you want. I could maybe unmute you if anybody wants to speak, if I knew how to do that. Let's have a look. Unmute all. If anyone's got a question, I think now you could, if anybody can ask. Maybe you've all gone. Hello? All right, not hear anything, so bye-bye all. Have a great day.